Hi, and welcome to Live Your Language Tips and Inspiration for Your Bilingual Life. I'm Stephanie, a PhD student in second language acquisition and a mother to two little boys that I am raising to be trilingual. I am raising my children in the one parent, one language method using French, which is my non-native language. That means I speak French to them all the time, even though it's not my native language. My husband is an English native speaker, so he speaks English to my sons all the time. And my oldest son, who is 3, is going to a Spanish immersion preschool. We also have recently welcomed a au pair from Colombia, and she is the one who's mostly responsible for the Spanish language input for my youngest son, who is 1.5 now. So if you are like me and you're raising a child in your non-native language, there are a couple things that are a little different. So today I'm just going to talk about 10 key moments or 10 experiences that were very important and very pivotal in my experience raising a child in my non-native language, and things that you might be able to relate to. The first thing you might be able to relate to is the utter bliss of your child finally speaking to a native speaker for the first time and actually having that native speaker understand your child and be able to converse with your child. This is a huge moment because I know that for a lot of people, especially myself included, when we decide to go this route, you know, we have we're very self-conscious about our pronunciation, our vocabulary choice, and all the things that make us different from native speakers. So, you know, we kind of go about it as if it's like an experiment. Like, you know, we do what we're supposed to do, we do our best, and we hope that one day our children will be able to just sort of integrate into situations with native speakers and be able to interact. So the first time your child actually speaks with a native speaker and they understand and they have a conversation, it is utter bliss. And that's how I felt. So if you haven't felt that way yet, if you're just really early in your journey, I can't wait till you can experience it too, because it just makes those like 2-3 years of just doubting yourself and feeling super self-conscious, and also the hard work of raising a bilingual child, it just melts away and it's all worth it. All right, the second thing you might be able to relate to is having that conversation with your family or your spouse or your significant other about what you are thinking of doing. This is a big moment because for a lot of people, I know a lot of you because I've read a lot of the comments, you're really just exploring this idea. You're wondering if it's possible. You're wondering, you know, if it really is possible. How come I'm not reading about it? How come I'm not hearing any success stories? Like, how come there's nothing out there about it? It's all native speakers. So when you when you actually confront your spouse about this idea and start talking to them, it can be really nerve-wracking. This is something that you're really interested in and it's very special to you and it's a deep desire of yours, and you really want your spouse or significant other to support you. And you know, it can take time to kind of like plant the seed and to explain your ideas, and I really hope by watching this channel, and if I can provide more examples of how it's worked for us, maybe that can be of encouragement to you. The next thing that you might be able to relate to as a non-native speaker raising a child in your non-native language is those polite comments that strangers and maybe even some friends and family give you when you tell them that you are raising a child in your non-native language. So you did the work, you talked to your spouse about it, you got them on board, even if they're a little like uneasy about the decision, and you know, you've started this path, and you know, you might have a baby, maybe they're not speaking yet. So, you know, other people can't really see the outcome of your efforts yet. So when you tell them that, yes, I'm raising my child in this language and it's not my native language, but I studied it in high school and I really love this language. You know, a lot of times you get like a polite, oh, okay, that's interesting. Oh, all right. You know, people are nice about it. They're polite. No one, at least in my experience, really confronted me to my face about this decision. But I say to that, just stay the course, stay with your decision, see it out at least until your child starts speaking. If you decide to start early on as a baby, just wait and see. You know, those polite, okay, that's interesting comments will soon become, wow, that's so cool. I can't believe they're speaking this language with this other person. The next thing you might be able to relate to is feeling completely nervous around native speakers when you are speaking to your child. You know, on the playground or out, or maybe you're a tourist in a country where your minority language is the majority language, or you have visitors. I know I definitely felt that way, especially when I recently went to Quebec, and I went to a playground and I was conversing with my sons in French, which is of course not my native language, and it would certainly be obvious to the people who were around me. So I definitely felt a little bit nervous about it, even though it's just our norm and it would have been so weird to switch to English. We chose to stick with it in public, even when people who don't understand the language are around us. We decided to do that, and I have seen very great results that I'm very pleased with. So it was all worth it, but that nervousness is something that you definitely might be able to relate to. So the fifth thing you might be able to relate to is the very first time your child says a word in the minority language. For us, like I said, this is unique to my experience, but we started on day one in French. A year and a half, a year or so of just me speaking in French, having no idea if this is gonna work out. And then finally, when those very first words came, they were in French, and I was just absolutely elated. You know, you have this feeling like, oh my gosh, it worked! I can't believe it! I don't know why, like looking back, why I was so surprised. Of course, you put in French, French will come out, but for some reason it was just so surprising to me, and it just was utter bliss. The sixth thing you might be able to relate to is pausing the conversation with your child in order to look up a word in the dictionary. Now, I know that a lot of times, especially when you're speaking with native speakers, who knows, for work or whatever, they encourage you to use circumlocution. That's a technique that you can use to get around having to use the vocabulary word that you're missing. Well, when I'm talking with other parents who are raising their children bilingually in a non-native language, I suggest that you always stop and look up those words in the dictionary. That's going to allow your child to have a richer vocabulary. And it's also going to help you learn the language, because it turns out like a lot of times those words that you don't know, they come up again and again and again and again. And the best way to learn a word is in context, when you have a bunch of other things reinforcing the learning of that word, making them more salient, I guess is what we would say as researchers. So I encourage you to always look it up in the dictionary if you don't know it. Even if you have to pause the conversation for just a minute, I suggest keeping your phone on you, keeping that dictionary app right on the home screen. That way you can easily access it. But yeah, it does kind of make things a little bit awkward, and I'm not quite sure that native speakers or heritage speakers have to stop and do this all the time, but it's definitely something that happens daily, multiple times a day for us, and I can definitely tell you that it has helped my language grow so much. All right, the seventh thing that you might be able to relate to if you are raising a child in your non-native language is making up songs on the spot in your minority language. So, you know, every language, every culture has songs that are unique to that language or culture. Well, you know, we grew up, like for instance, I grew up with my favorite songs, you know, Old MacDonald Have a Farm, Bingo, like all these nursery rhymes. And now that, you know, the holidays are coming, or they have come already, there are a lot of songs that I grew up with that I love, that I want to share with my children. However, I don't know if there's a French equivalent to them, and sometimes if there's a French equivalent, you know, they don't quite sound right, but I just want to share those songs I have, so I will just kind of make up the words and sing them to the tune of the song that I know in English, and just kind of hope for the best. Like, to this point, my children have never argued about it. They still love it. They probably think that that's the way the song goes. So one day, maybe down the road, they will speak with somebody else who will be like, that's definitely not a song I've ever heard. But yeah, so you might be able to relate if you are doing the same thing. The eighth thing you might be able to relate to, if you're doing the one parent, one language method and your spouse does not speak the minority language, is translating for other people who are in the area so that they understand what your child is saying. I don't translate everything. I only translate those things that are absolutely necessary to the conversation, especially if my child speaks someone else's name that's in the room. You know, kind of sometimes like we have this assumption that if we hear our name, like people are saying bad things about us. And I just want everyone in the room to know that no, he's not saying anything bad about you. This is what he said. So that's how I go about it. Let me know in the comments below how you handle situations where there's not a native speaker or there's not a speaker of your minority language in your presence. The ninth thing that you might be able to relate to is trying to decide what language a word is in. Right now, my son, my youngest, is a year and a half, and he's learning new words all the time and saying things all the time, but they don't quite come out as they should, right? I mean, he's learning. So he has a lot of words that we have no idea what he's trying to say. So, you know, for example, I will be sitting with my au pair from Colombia, and my youngest will say something, and I'm like, oh, I think he's trying to say more. I think he's trying to say encore, plus. And she's like, no, I actually think he's trying to say más, like más, more in Spanish, or he's trying to say something else, like a toy or something. So you might have experienced those conversations with other adults that are part of your child's language plan, trying to decide, like, is this word in French? Is it in Spanish? Which language is this in? The next thing you might be able to relate to as a parent raising a child in your non-native language is your child actually preferring you to speak the minority language if for whatever reason you say something in the majority language. Husband says something in English, and keep in mind, like, him and I, we speak English between us, like that's the only language me and my husband speak, but sometimes my son would actually translate what my husband said to me as if I couldn't understand it. So I just thought that was really funny. So that might be something that you might experience. Like, I might also experience them asking you to speak in the minority language because of that person-language connection that Francois Grosjean talks about in his research. So don't be alarmed, actually take it as a positive thing. This really does work. This is possible, and you can do it even if you're not a native speaker. If you're advanced and you've studied a lot and you think that you're really ready to go to the next level and to pass that language on to your child, let me know, and maybe I can help you somehow if you have some insecurities or questions about it. All right, well, thank you so much for listening to this video. I hope it inspired you and helped you just feel a little bit more confident about this journey that you're going on. Trust me, it is worth it. And I hope that by looking at this channel, you can see that it's indeed possible and you can do it. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.